Are you eligible for an Australian visa? Find out with a free assessment from True Blue Migration Services. Go to truebluemigration.com now to check your eligibility with a registered migration agent.
Welcome to the New Life in Australia podcast, hosted by me, Karen Bleakley, founder of SmartStepsToAustralia.com. Moving to Australia with my family was a life-changing experience, but it wasn't without its challenges. That's why I'm passionate about making the relocation and resettlement process easier for you so you can enjoy this exciting adventure. Join me and my special guests as we share professional secrets and tips, learn from people who've made the move, and discover businesses that can help you realise your dreams. Now is the best time to create the life you've always wanted. This podcast is here to show you what's possible and to inspire you every step of the way. Let's go.
Let's take a moment to acknowledge the Gubbi Gubbi people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I live, work and play. I thank them for the privilege of being able to live in such an incredible part of the world, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of the New Life in Australia podcast. This week I'm really excited to be talking to Maryanne and Joy from True Blue Migration Services. We talked all about visas and moving to Australia, and they answered so many questions, so there is so much gold in this episode if you're considering making the move to Australia. So let's dive straight in and launch the interview. Hey there, today I'm here with Joy and Maryanne from True Blue Migration Services. Now, I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves and tell us about True Blue Migration Services, because it's so good to have you here today, because it's so important getting the visa right when you move to Australia. So yeah, if you can give us a little introduction, that'd be fantastic.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks for having us on. I'm Maryanne, and I am the co-owner of True Blue Migration with Joy. During my 20s, for about 10 years, I lived overseas. I lived in the UK, Ireland, Scotland, and then in South Africa. So it was a fantastic experience, and I got to meet a lot of people, and they were always asking questions about Australia. But on the other side, while I was living there as well, all the Australians and the South Africans and Kiwis all wanted to stay in the UK. So it was kind of always a discussion at barbecues and how can we stay? So now it's the reverse, and how can we come to Australia? So I've got a lot of experience with working overseas in immigration. So I originally worked in South Africa, organising visas for people to go to America, to Disneyland, to Israel and kibbutzes, and for working holiday visas to the UK. Then I moved to the UK and started working in UK immigration, organising for people to stay in the UK, which was interesting. And the company I was working for at the time also had a branch for people wanting to immigrate to Australia. So I got into it that way, and then married a South African and came back to Australia in 2006 and decided to start a company, obviously True Blue Migration. Our goal was to lead clients through the migration journey in a down-to-earth, friendly and upfront approach. When I'm not working, I've got 2 teenage girls who keep me busy with their sporting activities.
Hi, I'm Joy, and I'm the other owner of True Blue Migration, and a little secret, we're actually sisters.
Wow, I didn't know that.
My background is in corporate HR and psychology, so I travelled around Australia and worked in those fields for a while. When Maryanne came back to Australia in 2006. My children were 2 and 3. I wasn't in corporate anymore, and I wanted to try something different. Maryanne decided to set up the company. I was looking for to help her, see what I could do, and asked to work on the website itself. And that's how things kicked off. And when I'm not working, I'm usually found at the local op shop because I'm a very keen thrifter.
Oh, I love op shopping. It's fantastic. So it's a real family business then. So you didn't have a background in like immigration work. You went into that after starting working on the website and the kind of back sort of admin side of the business?
Yes, Karen, that's right. I hadn't worked at all in immigration, but so it was a steep learning curve. And as part of being able to become a registered agent, I had to go through the graduate certificate in migration law so that I could become registered. it is a fascinating area to work in. True Blue, this is 18 years ago now when we got it started, and I guess in a nutshell, we are trying to make the visa journey as stress-free as possible for our clients.
Which is fantastic, because it's the most stressful thing ever, applying for your visa, and it's the most important part of your whole move, and it can be really difficult and challenging, and there's so much waiting, and it just really makes all the difference when you've got a company on side that can help you and support you through the whole process.
Yeah, immigration law is very complex, and we know that people can feel very intimidated by the process, and that's why Maryanne mentioned that we like to be we're very down to earth. We are upfront with people if we can't see an option for them. We offer a free initial eligibility check for people so that they can get an understanding of an option or any options that they may have. The best part, I guess, of working in this environment is being able to help people find a path they didn't know they had. And those moments when, grant emails come through, whether it's permanent residency or an initial employer-sponsored, visa grant or Australian citizenship, it's just such a buzz for the team and the agent to make those calls. And that's when it feels, really rewarding to know that we've been a really important part of that journey. And our agents will be crying on the phone with our clients because it has been a long journey and there are speed humps there and it's not linear. But we see our role as to guide people through that, help them over the bumps and get their result, which is to be able to stay in Australia.
Yeah, I love all of that. There's so much to unpack there, I think, because I know when we were making the move to Australia, we spoke to a few migration agents that just kind of dismissed that we weren't eligible for a move. And we ended up speaking to quite a few different agents before we found somebody that was willing to kind of talk to us a bit more about my husband's experience. Just to give you the context, when we were moving, we spent 5 really difficult years trying to decide whether to move because we had 3 little kids and taking them away from grandparents and everything was so hard. When we finally decided we wanted to move, my husband's occupation in avionics was removed from the skills list. And it was literally the week we decided we were going to start looking into it all properly, and his skill was removed from the list. So we had to kind of try and find an agent that was willing to have a conversation with us about the different opportunities and the different options, and that could kind of look at his skills, his experience, his qualifications, and see where there were crossovers with other occupations. And it really makes a difference when you've got an agent that's willing to kind of look at the whole picture and kind of work with you to try and see where your opportunities are. Because, as I say, some agents just dismissed us straight away and said we weren't eligible, but we were able to actually find a way to come in under an electrical kind of qualification in the end, because his qualifications and experience did have a good crossover with other occupations. So I think it's just having that open mind, isn't it? And having those conversations and kind of being able to take things forward and sort of looking at opportunities for whether people are missing information that maybe they need an extra top-up qualification or a bit more work experience or whatever it might be that helps them get that visa. So that's really fantastic. So it sounds like really your point of difference is that you make things not easier, but it's kind of about opening the conversation and about trying to keep the process as smooth as possible. And like you say, those down-to-earth kind of conversations that you have really do make all of the difference. When it comes to what people should look for when they're trying to find a migration agent, what should they be considering? Like, I know when we were making the move, we didn't know anyone else who'd moved to Australia. So we were online looking on Google, trying to find agents, just literally trying to find people just from Google searches. We didn't really know what we should be asking an agent to decide if they were the right fit for us. What kind of tips have you got there in terms of what should people look for and what should people be asking?
Yeah, so the first thing, Karen, We have two ways of contacting us. The most popular is on our website. We've got a extremely user-friendly but a comprehensive online questionnaire. So some of the questions people might be thinking, why are you asking that? But from their answer, we can work out exactly which sort of visas their options are. So on our website, on truebluemigration.com, we've got for people who are overseas and people who are in Australia, because there can be different pathways depending on your location. Once that form is filled out, there's a team of agents that review the online forms each day, and we go through and do an assessment whether they're eligible or not. So the things we look at is what their current visa is, how long they've got to go, do they have a condition that they can apply for another visa in Australia, or are they prevented from that? If they're on a working holiday visa, how long have they been working for their employer? Are they close to their 6 months? The big one is age. So depending on your age will depend on what visas you're eligible for. So, for example, working holiday visa, if you're British, your cut-off's 35. If you're looking for a permanent residency, the cut-off's 45. There's all different. For a 482, the age is ageless, which a lot of people don't know, so they can carry on getting 482s until their retirement. Also, the occupation, like you said, Karen, based on some people may be highly skilled in an occupation and have 10, 15 years of work experience, but if they don't have the relevant qualification, one visa pathway will not be an option. However, another visa pathway may be an option. So it's looking at that, and that's often difficult when people come in and they're earning a 6-figure salary and they're high up in the business, but if they don't have the correct qualification for the skilled visa pathway, for example, then it's not an option and they need to go through employer-sponsored. Also, your relationship status. So you can include your partner on all visas, depending if you're married or de facto, but for some visas that counts towards points as well. Your employment from overseas and your employment in Australia, there's all the things we factor in. If you have an employer who wants to sponsor you as well, whether you're overseas or in Australia. So these are all in our questionnaire. It seems like it is quite complicated, but it's not. And from there, we do a summary and provide you with a free assessment of what you're eligible for, what we believe is the best option. There could be oars. You may qualify for this, or you may qualify for that. And then we provide, what they're eligible for, and then we can arrange a consult if they're interested in using our services, and we provide assessment from there. But in that assessment, it may be initially a few questions so we get the full picture, or it might be a full assessment saying, yes, you're a registered nurse, you qualify for this, this and this. These are our fees, these are the government fees. Let me know if you want to have a chat and we can go forward. So we're very upfront with the process and our fees and your options. So the first thing to do would be do a free eligibility check with us through our website, or phone through and chat to one of the agents, or through our very comprehensive social media channels as well. We get a lot of inquiries via that as well.
No, that's great. So that kind of covers the questions for the point of the eligibility and what information people are going to be needing to be providing. So if people come through then to the consult, what kind of questions is it good for them to be able to ask you? What should it be kind of questions around how your fee structure works, or what kind of questions is it good for like a client to be able to ask a migration agent?
Karen, it's good if the person can be as upfront about their information as possible. We are on their side in the sense of where the more information we have, the better able we are to, realistically tell them what their options are. Someone thinking about working with an agent should be asking, certainly doing their own research initially around the particular agent they're talking to. Some of the things our clients say that they chose True Blue for was because we've been around a long time. So they felt safe that we weren't going to disappear overnight. They liked that we had a lot of agents. We've got a team of 7 migration agents, which allows us to both tailor a case to a particular agent, as well as share knowledge across the team of agents. If we have a complex visa situation that one of our agents is managing, then the team can talk about it and pull in our respective experiences to give the best result. People looking for an agent would want to know that they've got visibility, an agent with a strong social media presence, consistently high Google reviews, being able to be contacted easily are reasons why you might choose a particular agent. When it comes to migration agents must be registered to be able to offer migration advice legally. Agents based in Australia, that is. It is important to know that the agent you work with is registered with MARA, that's our industry body. They have a website where you can search the agent by surname or by business, and it confirms that they are currently registered. That is important because anybody can actually say, oh, yeah, I've done that. I've done visas before. I helped my friend. I can help you as well and give you advice. But we would strongly discourage people to take advice from their friends and family, however well-meaning it may be. Things change all the time in immigration. So someone who was eligible for a particular pathway 6 months ago, it may be completely different now. So talking to a registered agent about what is happening right now with migration law and eligibility is more important than, gleaning sort of views from those people around you who, of course, are important to know their experiences. But when it comes down to getting an assessment, definitely go with a well-established migration agent.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And I've got a free Facebook community, and I'm in lots of different free Facebook communities, and you constantly see people in there all the time asking questions around visas. And it's so dangerous because, like you say, information changes all the time, and what suits one person won't suit another person, and getting up-to-date, accurate professional advice is always the most important thing when it comes to visas, because, as I say, I'll say it again, the visa is the most important part of your move. If you don't have the visa in place, you're not moving to Australia. So it is really, really important. Now, I hope you've got your crystal balls ready for this one. What developments do you think will be coming for migration in the future? Can you give us any kind of insights of where you think migration is going to be going with Australian visas?
It does need we do need a crystal ball, and that would be great sometimes because the migration process is long for most cases. So you're going to be working with an agent for months and even years. So as well as having confidence in the agent, you've got to make sure that they are keeping you up to date with what's going on. We do expect the demand for skilled migrants to Australia to continue to grow. Immigration recently announced the number of allocated places that each state has to offer to migrants on a 190 skilled nominated visa, which is a permanent residency visa based on your occupation, your age, your working experience, your English score, a points-based system. It was great when the numbers came out, as overall there were 60% more places offered across Australia than the previous financial year. Interestingly, the only state that decreased its numbers is Queensland. That's been a very popular destination. So,
I think since COVID, a lot of people have moved to Queensland. So I think Queensland's been sort of inundated with a lot of people moving from Melbourne and from Sydney and other cities.
Yes, Queensland is a really popular destination for migrants when we speak to them. And sometimes it's a case of not taking a particularly straight line path to where you will eventually end up. It is about getting a visa where you're eligible, being able to come to Australia, and perhaps the next step is where you'll get to live in Queensland. There are regional sponsored visas where initially it may not be the state or the area of Australia you wish to live in, but if you have a long-term goal for yourself and your kids, or if you're a single person to settle permanently in Queensland or in Perth, being able to look at the steps it will take to get there. And that's what we can help with, because people can initially be disheartened, thinking, I just want to go and live in Brisbane. And we can look and say, okay, at the moment, Queensland's not taking your skill, it's not on their list, that could change. In the meantime, let's kick it off because you are eligible for a skill assessment as a boat builder, for example. So let's get that part locked in because it takes weeks or months for a skill assessment to come through. So I guess as far as the crystal ball goes, definitely Australia has a shortage in skilled migrants, has for a long time and will continue to have. Last year in November, immigration opened up the 482 visa, opened up permanent residency to more holders of the 482 employer-sponsored visa. Prior to November 2023, if you held a visa in the short-term list, you had very limited options for PR apart from a COVID sort of special cohort. But in November, it was announced that people who held visas in the short-term occupations, hundreds of occupations, would now have a pathway to permanent residency, which was such great news to be able to give to our clients who were on short-term visas and had hoped for a change like this. It became quicker for you to be able to meet the requirement. Employees now needed to be sponsored for 2 years by their employer rather than 3 years, which meant it was more attractive for people to maybe come to Australia versus other countries to be able to kick off the temporary process before commencing the permanent residency process. So favourable changes like that tell us signals from immigration that Australia needs skilled workers. So that's our hot take.
Yeah, and again, that just reinforces how useful it is to be using a migration agency because your fingers on the pulse with all of this news that's coming out and all of this information, and you know what's going on and see the announcements as they happen, so you can kind of feed that information through to your clients as well so that they know the most up-to-date information. So right now, I've asked my community, my Facebook group and my audience if they had any questions for you and ended up getting quite a lot of emails. So I've put together a list of kind of quick fire questions for you to answer here from my audience. Right, the first one is, does the location of your migration agent matter? So I know that a lot of my audience are based in the UK. A lot of migration agencies are based in Australia. Does it matter if you're using an Australia-based migration agency, or is it easy to use one in your home country? How does that kind of work?
Not at all, Karen. We work with people all over the world, but it's often a question that you get. I'm in Sydney, you're in Melbourne. How does it work? So all our clients are based internationally or interstate. Probably only 10% of clients I'd actually meet face-to-face. All our correspondence is done through the phone, through emails or through Zoom. All the applications are electronic, so the documentation can be scanned and emailed. So your location doesn't matter where you are. So it's more about the fit with the agent that you want to work with, that you've got a good relationship with them. I often have clients refer to me as they felt like I was their friend, which I am their friend, but and invited to weddings and christenings and migration parties and permanent residency parties. So it's a big thrill to me when I know that I was such an important part of their migration over, and meeting them, you feel like a superhero because they're like, this is Maryanne and she helped me get my visa. So it doesn't matter where you are. We actually got this world map in both our offices, and each time we get a new client from a new country, we get to put a pin in. So the map is very full, but there's pins in every corner of the world and every state of Australia. So it makes no difference where you are located. If you are located with your agent in the same suburb or the same town, you're very lucky, and if it's the fit you want, but it's very rare. So so all our clients are based everywhere, as you will see. I'll take a photo of the map and send it to you.
Oh, yeah, that would be really good. I'll pop that on Instagram. That would be really good. I love that. That's really nice. And it helps you stay connected with all of the people that you're helping as well. It gives you that visual representation of all of your clients and where they are in the world, and that's cool. Navigating the Australian visa process can be confusing and overwhelming, so why not remove the stress with a free visa assessment? The registered migration agents at True Blue Migration Services can check your eligibility and recommend the best option for you. Established in 2006, they've helped thousands of people turn their Australian dreams into reality. With a large team of highly experienced agents and hundreds of 5-star Google reviews, you couldn't be in safer hands. They work with people all over the world, so it doesn't matter where you are. Just go to truebluemigration.com and click for a free assessment, or email info@truebluemigration.com for more information. Remember, visa assessments are completely free of charge, so you have nothing to lose. Get the answers you need today and get on your way. Right, now this is a bit of a loaded question. What is the best visa to come to Australia on?
The best visa to come to Australia on is firstly one that you qualify for.
Yeah.
And that meets your either short-term goals or long-term goals. So that's part of our free assessment, is to find out things like, are you looking to just come for a short period? Maybe you want to visit. That's a fairly quick visa to get. If you are in the age group for a working holiday, then that's something that you may want to get. If you are in your mid-60s and your children, two or three of your children have, left you in the UK, for example, and are settled as residents or citizens, and you want to come and join them, you want to get to know your grandkids, that a parent visa may work there. Another visa that might be best for you is an employer-sponsored visa. You may have lots of work experience in a particular occupation, can't pass a skill assessment, which is based on what the skill authority wants, not a reflection on your skills. But our experience means we know that you can be sponsored but for a certain number of years and then have a permanent residency pathway. So for some people, that is the best visa to get. For people outside Australia who want to make the big move, like your family did, Karen, where your partner had a trade skill and initially had to look around different pathways. But if you're the best visa for you, if it's long-term skilled migration settlement in Australia, you may be eligible now, which is fantastic. And we say get started, because at any time policies, state lists, etc. change. If you want to live here, you may need to go to a different area initially, perhaps work regionally, and then you can make your step up to permanent residency. So the best visa really depends on what you're trying to get out of your time in Australia.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just about thinking of those long-term goals and what your plans are in the future as to which visa will help you get there. So the next question is, what is the fastest visa to apply to come on? Now, I know that in the last season of the podcast, I'll pop a link below, I spoke to somebody who came over on a parent visa. Her name was Chris, and she took years and years. It was during COVID. It took a really long time to get over here. So I know some visas are very, very slow. What is the fastest visa to come over to Australia on?
The visitor visa or the tourist visa is generally the fastest. People in certain countries can get them instantly granted sometimes, and they're usually granted for 3 months at a time, so 12-month multiple entry, which means you can come 3 months at a time in a 12-month period. If you're also from a certain amount of countries and you're young, over 18 and under 31 or 35, depending on your passport, you can be granted a working holiday visa, which usually takes a couple of weeks to be granted. They're for 12 months, and you can come over here and try before you buy, suss out Australia, have work rights, work for an employer. Strangely enough, a lot of the people who come out on working holiday visas who work for an employer, the employers love them, and then they want to sponsor them. Well, like, we can't lose you. You're so amazing. And so that's a way which sometimes people come out just for the experience, and then they end up wanting to stay permanently. But that is a quick visa. At the moment,
that was also one of the questions coming up, is how easy is it to transfer into that permanent visa after you've come on a working holiday visa? So there are pathway options for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of working holiday makers transit through to the employer sponsored, and then after they've worked for the employer sponsored for 2 years, they can go to apply for permanent residency. So it's also in that same sort of breath that the working holiday maker who's out here working may be highly skilled, and then they look at doing an independent skilled visa while they're here. And so by the time their visa is about to expire, they can then be granted permanent residency while they're here. So One thing that I wanted to mention as well is that no two people have exactly the same journey. So you may be chatting to someone and I did it this way, this way, this way. And it's like, well, have they got that? So, and it's also dealing with completely different family dynamics. So you might have a young individual person who qualifies, or you might be uprooting your whole family with 3 kids, moving over, leaving the grandparents. So it's all different emotions. So it's good to use an agent because sometimes we're unpaid counsellors as well because they're asking little other questions or their stress. So yes, so if you do come out on a working holiday visa, there is many ways to transfer. Another popular visa is the partner visa. So people come out here, fall in love with an Australian or a permanent resident, and then they're eligible for a partner visa if they live together for a period of time or registered a relationship. So, there is ways of staying here permanently.
Working holiday makers often meet an Australian and fall in love, and if you're on a working holiday and you meet an Australian and the sparks are flying, a partner visa is definitely something on the table as the next visa. And it's interesting because there is a lot of people think they need to either be married or have lived together for 12 months before they can lodge a partner visa. In most states and territories of Australia, you can actually register your relationship provided you're living together now. So it means that couples, perhaps the working holiday maker has 3 months left on their visa, so they haven't got time to live together 12 months, they've been together, say, 8 months. Registering allows them to continue and lodge a partner visa. Things like that are why talking to a registered, experienced migration agent are crucial, because if you ring and speak to someone and they say, no, you haven't got 12 months, that could be the end of it for you. You think, well, somebody told me I can't. So asking around is really important. So not that we're not advocating that working holiday makers arrive and go straight hunting for an Australian partner, but of course the work that people do and the social life in Australia means that lots of working holidays makers do find an Australian partner or perhaps someone else who's a permanent resident who's come in on a skilled visa. So that's an option for a working holiday maker.
Yeah, no, that's really good to know. Like you say, if you've got that professional advice from somebody, then it really helps you know how to navigate where you're going with that visa and how to apply in the future. Another question that I get asked a lot is around bringing your parents to Australia at some point later on in the future. People move out here with their kids and set up their lives, and then they're thinking in the long term of, can I bring my parent out or parents out in a couple of years' time? What are the visa options and sort of restrictions and difficulties with all of that?
Yeah, so there are many different types of parent visas. It depends on the permanent visa streams, depends on your age. So if you're over 67, then you have an opportunity to apply for an onshore parent visa, provided you meet the eligibility criteria. So the main criteria, which is non-negotiable, is meeting the balance of family test, which means that you must have the equal or majority of your children living in Australia as permanent residents or citizens. So that if you don't tick that, then it's not an option. And there's another temporary one, which I'll chat about in a moment. So the onshore options, being over 67 is an 804 age parent, which can take 30 plus years, but you're able to stay here on a bridging visa with work rights if you want to work, and be with your kids and your grandkids during that process. There are other ones that are a little bit quicker, like Chris said the other day, the contributory parent visa, where you pay a sum of money. And previously they used to go through really quickly, but they've pushed out long time. So it's definitely worth speaking to an agent to sort of hedge your bets on how old you are, how long is it going to take, do I want to part with $46,000, depending if you get Medicare rights too, because that's a big thing for parents. So if you're coming from the UK, you're blessed because you get reciprocal Medicare rights, so that's a big thing. But if you're coming from another country such as South Africa, you you may not be entitled to Medicare and you'd have to take out private health. So you might want to get the faster one and pay more money to have the access to the healthcare system. So if you're under 67, then there's the offshore parent visas, which can take a long time to process at the moment. The one equivalent to the 804 still takes 30 years, so we generally don't encourage that one. What we do, because the processing time is so long, and when parents decide they want to move over, they are generally very eager and want to be here with their children. So what we would recommend is lodging a permanent parent visa. And while that's processing, apply for the temporary parent visa, which is the 870 visa, which can be issued for 3 or 5 years and up to 10 years. The 870 temporary parent visa is also good because you do not need to meet the balance of family requirement. You can just have one child here and have 4 living somewhere else. It is income tested for the child, so you need to earn a certain amount of money for that, and it doesn't have work rights. So it's more about being here and living with your children. So there are lots of different options. So we generally, as we mentioned before, give us a call or fill out the online form on our website, and then we can give you the pathway for parents.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, this question came from somebody who, I'm not quite sure of their situation, but they were asking how important is it to have qualifications and work experience in an occupation when you're moving to Australia. I'm assuming the person who was asking had maybe just finished, say, their degree, or they'd just qualified in something and maybe hadn't got the work experience. But equally, I know I've seen a few people ask before that they have got lots of experience, but they don't necessarily have the qualifications. So I thought this was a good one to kind of cover here.
When you're looking for applying for a skilled visa, the first step is getting a positive skill assessment. You have to have that before you can move any further to putting in an expression of interest. Each occupation has its own skill assessing authority, and some require you to just have the qualification, and that will give you a positive skill assessment. For example, a degree qualified engineer or an accountant. The degree itself allows you to get a positive skill assessment. There are other occupations such as general professionals, marketers, scientists. They need a relevant qualification at the right level and work experience, and it's the combination of those two that allow them to get a positive skill assessment. And then there are some occupations where just having a large block of work experience may be enough. Some IT occupations and some trade occupations. So it is complex because if you don't meet the skill assessing requirement, it's a deal breaker. Skill assessments are not the Department of Immigration. So getting that first step done is when you can then look at what state has got my job on their list. Do I reach enough points to actually get invited to apply? So it is frustrating for people who've worked their way up and don't have a qualification, and we empathise with people in that situation. But it is really worth asking, because for a newly graduated engineer, if they're aged between 25 and 32, they're going to get maximum age points. If they can do really well in the English test, even native English speakers are encouraged to do the test so they can maximise their points. They may be able to get an invitation for a skilled visa with no work experience, whereas it's very different if you have completed a degree in economics, for example.
Final question from the audience is, are there any options for people to move to Australia if they're over 45? I know we've covered the parent side of things, but say somebody doesn't have kids in Australia, they're, say, over 45, are there any options for them?
Yeah, the options do become limited. The 482 temporary visa is a renewable visa. Some are issued for 4 years, some are issued for 2, and that's ageless. So you can have people on that back-to-back long-term. I've actually had some clients who have come out on that and worked, and then their children have immigrated independently, and now they're being sponsored on a parent visa. Meanwhile, they're still working on the 482 visa. The 482 visa has some concessions of a pathway for permanent residency based on a high income. So that is an option for a period of time. There's also a business visa stream, which is applicants can be over 45 for that, and investor stream as well. But your options for the most sort of popular for overseas people, the independent skilled migration visa, that has a flat cutoff of 45. So there's no negotiating that. So there are a few options, not as many if you're under 45, which does seem quite young now.
Yeah. But the perfect opportunity for someone to speak to a migration agent that can help navigate that, because it does get more complicated the older you get and your options are limited. That's fantastic. Right, so we've just got one finishing question here for you. If you have to leave us with one piece of advice for somebody who is considering making the move to Australia, it's difficult to give one piece of advice. What would your one piece of advice be?
Do not wait another year. If you want to do it and you're eligible, make the move, because immigration policies change all the time. You might can take several months to get invited. You've got to take your age into account. Naturally, there are factors such as if you've got children, schooling, and those sort of things. It is a massive move for people coming from overseas, but just do it. If you want to live in Australia and it's such a great place to be, don't wait. Get an assessment, find out if you can, and if you can, weigh it up and go for it.
No one's two journeys are the same, so just get the right advice. And that's why I say to people, they will say, Maryanne, am I going to get an invitation? If I do all these skill assessments, we stagger our payments, so if you don't go each stage, so if you don't get to that particular stage, then you're not going to pay additional fees. So I always say it's worth throwing your hat in the ring and seeing if it's an option. And at the final stage, you don't want to do it, you don't do it, but at least you've had the chance. So you better regret. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, as Joy has said, just apply as soon as you're eligible, because you have people who I had an email come back and I spoke to them in 2014 and said, I'm ready to apply. I was like, well, I'm really sorry, but your occupation is no longer on the Western Australian list and you've gone up 3 age groups, so you lost points there. So so people come back years and years later and then they must have held on to our advice, and then they come back and you're like, sorry, mate, can't help you. So it's, so it's definitely strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, no, that was very nearly us as well. I don't know what it is, but you just assume when you're from the UK that there is an easy option to move to Australia, and that if you've got a skill that's needed, that it will be easy when the time comes when you've made that decision. And when we were backpacking, my husband and I were backpacking around Australia back in 2008, 2009, we met lots of people that had moved over on his skilled occupation, on the avionics skill. And so we just kind of made an assumption that the skill was on the list and it would just stay on the list. We didn't really have any appreciation that the lists change and that the rules change and everything. And we were young and we didn't really think about it. And then we kind of realising you're creeping over different age barriers and things, and your points are dropping. And then obviously my poor husband had to do the English language test, which he's an engineer by trade. He's not naturally somebody that likes to sit down and write letters and essays and things. So that was a bit of a challenge for him to try and boost his points a little bit. But you do make that assumption that the time will always be there, and it's easy to kind of put it off. But yeah, I think it's just so important, just if you want to do it and you want to do it in the future, that you look at it now, whether you go ahead with it, like you say, start the process and see where it leads you, and then make the decision later. But if you don't start the process and you wait too long, you might find that you've lost the opportunity altogether. Well, it's been so good chatting to you today. It's been really helpful. It's kind of uncovered lots of bits of information that I know is going to prompt people to get organised and start making the decision about whether they want to go forward with this. It's been really, really helpful. Can you just tell us a little bit about where people can go to find you online?
You can find TrueBlue in lots of places. Our website's perhaps the first starting point, truebluemigration.com. You can navigate there and see there's online forms for if you're inside or outside Australia. You can do a quick email to us at info@truebluemigration.com. There's a contact us, quick response, and also our phone numbers are on there. We're also active on lots of different social media channels, so you can flick us a message on there. So lots of ways you can reach out and make initial contact with us for a free eligibility check.
That's fantastic. And I'll pop all of your links in the show notes as well so people can find you easily. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for your time today. It's been really fun.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Lovely to chat.
So thanks again to Maryanne and Joy from TrueBlue Migration Services. It was a really, really useful episode. I'm sure you'll agree. If you're keen to take part in their free eligibility check to see if you're eligible for a visa, the links are in the show notes so you can get started. So thanks for listening, and let's get building your new life in Australia one episode at a time.